Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be ranking the new Hypercharges that are going to be released either this weekend or next weekend. And the reason why is I want to help you buy the best Hypercharges possible. And I don't want you to waste your gems on useless Hypercharges like the first one that's on our list, which is also the worst. At number 6 is easily Meg. So Meg's Hypercharge is absolutely terrible. And the reason why Meg's Hypercharge is so bad is it makes her swing just a little bit bigger so you can maybe hit 2 or 3 brawlers. Now that sounds nice, but think about her super. It's very hard to chain her super, and even if you do, you're not going to get too much value. And her hypercharge is even worse when you consider her mech form, because when you turn into your mech, you get a 1k shield. But usually you either start in your mech form, or when you turn back, you've just turned and you've killed all your enemies, and you're not going to get much value out of that 1k shield. That's why I think her hyper, although it's not too bad, I would still say it's by far the worst of the bunch. The next worst hyper I would say on this list is actually Sam. Although you can throw the gloves out and you can pull the gloves back in, it's still not that beneficial. And although you can get upwards of maybe even 6k damage, that could be very valuable. It's not as strong as the other hypercharges on our list. And I would say that usually you want to be using Sam around walls, so getting that open shot might be a little bit hard, and it really contradicts his playstyle, unlike the other hypercharges on our list. At number 4, our fourth best hypercharge is definitely Lola. So Lola's hypercharge is pretty good. It inflates her ego does more damage, it has more health, it's much stronger, and I would say it makes Lola just a better brawler overall. This is definitely one of those hypercharges like Colts, where just straight up buffs their super, no questions asked. And I think it's a bit better than Colts or Shelly's or any other hyper similar in that vein, because Lola's hyper is permanent until her ego dies. And I think that powerful ego would be extremely beneficial, especially if you run the shield gadget on her ego. She could do a lot of work, maybe even on heist. She could do a lot of work, and I think that Lola's hyper would be very valuable, especially since right now she chains so many supers, but it doesn't really amount to much. That's why I think Lola is number 4 on our list. Number 3 on our list, I would say, is Buster. And the reason why Buster barely squeaks out over Lola is although Lola's hypercharge is pretty strong, I would say Buster needs the hypercharge more. Buster gets upward of like 10, 12 supers per game. Even if you're sitting around your teammates in knockout or you're just chaining supers in hot zone, Buster has a lot of play. And I think that hyper, the 360, although it's really nice, it's not necessarily the best part. The best part, I would say, is the damage boost, the damage reduction, the speed, what makes all tanks broken. If you think about Ash's hypercharge, his hypercharge isn't all that strong, especially if you're playing against splash brawlers, but it's really the stat boosts that make his hypercharge so overwhelming. Because once you've dealt with all the rats, now you have a full HP Ash ready to clown on you with boosted stats, and that's exactly what I think Buster needs, especially that speed boost so he can just run up to you, gadget, kill you, and then he has a hyper super so he can just heal up. Number 2 on our list is actually Grom's hypercharge, and the reason why I put Grom's over Buster's is that the potential damage is upwards of 8,000, so you can easily kill people in knockout and bounty, and people tend to play Grom most in knockout, and I think getting that almost guaranteed kill is extremely valuable. Now, most of the time, especially if you're playing in lower elo ranges, people won't know how to dodge it, since the Grom bomb actually pushes them back to the side towards the diagonal paths. You're extremely likely to hit both shots, and that's why I think Grom's hyper is actually really strong. Like, if it was just an X in the same pattern twice, it probably wouldn't be anywhere as high as it is on this list, but because it switches patterns, it has a very high potential for hitting twice, and I think that makes it very valuable, especially because Grom's hyper is already so strong. Now you have a much higher chance of confirming that kill with that super. I think that deserves number 2 on our list. Number 1 on our list is easily Chester. Chester's hyper is so strong. You have the best super in the game. Well, not the best super in the game, but the best super for Chester. His massive explosion that breaks walls, that does 4k, and then you have a poison in all directions. Wow. So you have a massive bomb that poisons people, but it also slows. Wow, that's definitely the strongest hyper in the game. Think about it in hot zone, think about it in heist, think about it in brawl ball. You can break walls, you can slow, you can stun. The area control is insane. The damage is insane. You can team wipe so easily. If you get 2 hits with this super, you'll probably get your super instantly back. And Chester gets so many supers that getting this hyper will be not a problem. His hyper will be so strong, especially because it instantly gives you the massive explosion. Now, if Chester only super was that explosion, I think he'd definitely be maybe the best brawler in the game. But because he has some worse supers like the Poison Cloud and maybe the slow and the heal, especially when you don't need them, I think that really limits his potential. But being able to spam those hypers, I think will make Chester one of the best brawlers in the game in this upcoming update, and it's because of his hypercharge. And the stat boosts, of course, are very welcome on Chester. Think about Surge, except he's throwing out a Grom Bomb. That's also a Lu super. That's also a Crow super. That's pretty much what Chester's hyper is, and if that doesn't sound broken to you, I guess I can't convince you to buy any hypercharge. But I would definitely say Chester's is the best hypercharge out of all the 12 hypercharges that were released recently. Yes, that's right. I think it's better than Mr. P's hypercharge. That's how strong Chester's is. However, the only limiting factor is that Chester as a brawler isn't necessarily that great, but I think that this will make him skyrocket up the rankings into at least the top 10 spots because of his hyper, and his damage output will just complement his hyper so well. He'll be able to counter all tanks. Obviously, his weakness will be brawlers like Janet or long range brawlers or throwers. But other than that, I would say Chester will become one of the best brawlers in the game with this hypercharge. And his hypercharge is definitely the one I recommend buying. Now, for the rest of the hypercharges, you might be asking, are there any other hypercharges that you would recommend buying? And I would say yes. I would say Busters is worth it. Groms could be worth it, but only if you're a Grom main. Lola's, I would say, is definitely worth it. The reason why Lola's is worth it is because Lola's a really strong brawler in the meta right now, and that this hyper will make her a lot stronger. Same thing with Chester and Buster, that they're just gonna skyrocket up the rankings because of their hypercharges, while Grom, Meg, and Sam, they're not necessarily that good already, but their hypercharges are still very strong. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope you learn which hypercharges you want to buy